Well, all right. It's only right that we do the epilogue. I said I would do this. Yesterday I put out a video that was my predictions for patch 7.3. And I said that it was just going to be a repeat of 5.3. And we had a couple of other wacky like jokes, but I've just finished the patch. Let's give some initial fresh thoughts on it. So, first initial impression, I'm just going to get it out of the way, call it what it is. I didn't like it very much. I thought the patch was bloated and incredibly boring for most of the runtime. There were a lot of things that felt pointless and a lot of scenes that felt like they didn't need to be there, and so it just felt like it was kind of padded out. I would call patch 7.3 the appropriate ending to the Dawntrail story. It pretty much fits in with the rest of the Dawntrail story. It's how else would you end Dawntrail but with a patch like 7.3? It felt bloated, meandering, and kind of unsatisfying, in all honesty. Not as bad as 7.1, not as good as 7.2. So it's very mid in terms of the patches so far, just based on the story. The red flags on Geodude were pretty blatant. I'm surprised they didn't reprise Geode's, they killed Geode immediately, which is one of those things that I always complain about in Dawntrail. This entire expansion I've had this problem where they set something up and then pay it off immediately. And so the setup always happens right before the payoff. And so it becomes really predictable where it's oh, we met a guy that sells weaving accessories. He's a weaving merchant. And then 2 quests later, we need someone to buy thread. And all of a sudden they're okay, hey, there's that guy we literally just met. Or it's hey, we met a guy that's training to be a goldsmith. 2 quests later, we need a goldsmith. And so, oh, let's go to that guy we just met. They always do the setup right before the payoff. And Geode was the same way. There's nobody knew or cared about Geode at all. And so they give us a couple of quests wandering around with him and explaining his backstory and how important he is to Shale, apparently, and, how many good times they had together. And then he dies immediately. And they're oh, great, yeah. So that was the setup, was trying to make us care about him, and now he's dead. And then we spend, God, what felt like hours just mourning his death when we were supposed to be stopping Calyx. And yeah, just felt very padded. The dialogue is getting way too long in some of these cutscenes, whereas they're using so many words to say so little, and there's also a lot of there's a constant need to remind you of everything that happened, and so there's a lot of backtracking and talking in circles and repeating things. And the story is getting I don't know. It spends too many words saying too little, and then 90% of the gameplay is talking, so if it just feels like most of the dialogue doesn't really strike intrigue, then it's boring. As for where the story actually went, it wasn't a complete rehash of 5.3, so there's that, I guess. It probably would have been better if it was, but because it felt like it didn't have the same level of urgency. 5.3 culminates with freaking Hero's Gauntlet, where Elidibus is summoning Warriors of Light left and right. He's going to activate the Crystal Tower. It will probably kill Graha if he does, and he's trying to we're racing against the clock, and then they have a dungeon that plays that out, and it actually feels like a desperate situation, and is very immersive, very good stuff, culminating in also one of the better trials in the entire MSQ. This one, Meso Terminal as a dungeon was kind of forgettable. The bosses were fun. The second boss in particular was a standout, but as far as the dungeon's place in the story, it almost didn't need to be there. It was just, well, there's got to be a dungeon in the MSQ. I guess we'll do this again. And the trial, I don't know. The trial also kind of felt well, we need to have a trial, so let's summon Necron and have that fight. It almost didn't need to be there. And mechanically, the normal version of the trial is just kind of, it didn't really feel like it was doing anything special. I haven't tried the extreme yet, but just so. Not one of the better trials in my honest opinion. I liked the last one a lot better. And then they did that thing again where a lot of cool stuff happened in cutscenes that I felt could have been a solo duty. That last cutscene that was 20 minutes long where everybody's fighting Calyx in the Meso Terminal, I feel like that normally would be a good solo duty. Wukamot's trying to break down the barrier, they're holding off Necron again, and everything's going wrong, and there's purple gas everywhere and whatnot. It seemed like perfect fodder for a solo duty, and there just wasn't one. The puzzle section, Warehouse 1029, that was, as we discussed in the moment, I'm glad it wasn't just walking around talking to 3 people, but if they're gonna have point and click style puzzles, they've got to actually be puzzles. They can't just have obvious solutions, because it's not fun if the solution is obvious. It's just, oh, this is still just walking around and clicking on glowing objects with extra steps. There's no real puzzle element to it. So they got a little bit different with that. There was hints at puzzles. It was almost puzzles, but they would have to lean a little bit more into that to make it truly interesting, although I still prefer it to just talking to 3 people. wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of moments in this patch that would have made good solo duties. There's like, again, that confrontation with Calyx, the opening section with Geode felt like it should have been something, and I don't know. Writing-wise, I've said ever since 7.0, I feel like the whole concept of regulators and the memory manipulation, like, I always felt like all that was really stupid and kind of reductive, and it's impossible for me to believe that a society has built itself around that technology. It doesn't really make enough sense the way that it works, the way that it's explained, and I could never really truly, like, get invested in it. And so this patch being entirely focused on living without regulators and overcoming the fear of death, and like, it just didn't really land for me. Like, I found myself not very invested in the story at all. And the most interesting part of the story since 7.2 has just been Sphene as a character. She kind of has been carrying it. But even Sphene, 7.2 was interesting because we see Sphene at a low point. She's woken up into a strange new world that's allegedly her home, and she has to get a grasp of the situation while feeling very out of place. So there's that disparity there. But Sphene in this patch, for the most part, is just like, she's kind of, her resolve has been tested. She knows she's going to be the hero. She's going to help her people do whatever is right, what needs to be done. And so she kind of wraps back around to being kind of boring again because her character arc is kind of completed like early on in the patch. It's like, okay, she's already tempered her resolve. She's going to save the day, do whatever needs to be done for Alexandria. But the removal of a lot of that doubt, that second guessing, that lack of like belonging kind of takes away what made her interesting in the previous patch. And so it was obvious that was the direction her character was going to go, but it also makes me care a little bit less. It's less investable for me. So it's like, we didn't even have the crutch of Sphene to lean on. If anything, it felt like more of a shale patch, but at least the cinematics look pretty sometimes now. The cutscenes are pretty good. They've definitely come a long way in how they make cutscenes versus how they used to. And even the in-engine stuff is like, it's visibly, like, noticeably much better. You get a lot more range of expression out of the characters' faces, and they had a lot of, like, cleverly used animations to make it look a little bit less stiff than some of the previous MSQ cutscenes. So pretty good stuff with the cutscenes. Just like I said, I wish some of the cutscenes felt like they could have been solo duties. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much the best way I can describe it. Is I feel like this is like the appropriate ending to Dawntrail. It feels right at home in this expansion, and so better writing than 7.1. I feel like the character writing was on par with 7.2, but the script was very bloated, and so it's like the characters for the most part act like themselves. They feel believable. They feel like they should, and that's good, because 7.0, a lot of people felt like they weren't being characterized properly, which really bothered me a lot. 7.3, everybody's characterized correctly, but the dialogue is just very padded. It's just people just talk endlessly about things that don't really need that much discussion. And so it actually, again, just made me less invested in it because it just felt like the conversations were going on and on and on forever. And I just, like, I don't know. Like, the writing it's better in the characterization, but it's still got the same Dawntrail bloat problem of just being overly written. Like, it feels like somebody's trying to hit a word minimum, and so a lot of the conversations are just way longer than they need to be. So, man, I don't feel like I've really had much positive to say, but yeah, honestly, after slogging through that, I don't really feel too positively about it. Again, the most praise I could give it is just that it was better than 7.1. But that's not hard. 7.1 was the worst patch since 2.2. Like, 7.1 MSQ was really bad, in my opinion. Would you recommend someone to subscribe just for this patch MSQ? I mean, if you're on the fence about it, I would just wait until the rest of the content comes out, honestly. My genuine take would be it's probably better to wait until like 7.4 and then just like subscribe a week before 0.4 comes out, and then you get 2 patches worth of content on 1 month subscription. Yeah, there's no urgent reason to subscribe right now. All we've got is the MSQ, the Alliance raid, and then the new treasure dungeon. And like, if you're not gonna be doing the treasure dungeon a lot, you're not really gonna miss anything if you wait until the next patch. I don't think 8.0 is gonna be any better. I would be optimistic about 8.0 more than the patches, because with Dawntrail, 7.0 comes out, they would have already had planned a lot of the patch cycle. And so, they could adjust some of the writing. I think it's clear after 7.1 that the jump from 7.1 to 0.2 showed some adjustments to the writing philosophy, I feel. And so you could tell that they took the feedback into account a little bit. But, you gotta imagine they probably planned a lot of things that were going to happen, like, because they need to make the assets and they need to plan like dungeons and trials and stuff. So like, some stuff was probably already set in stone. Like, they probably already knew, okay, we're gonna fight Necron, we're gonna have to fight Zelenia. Like, that stuff they were gonna have to find a way to work it in. So I'm sure they could still adjust the script, just not dramatically. But with 8.0, it'll be a whole new like writing team arrangement. Like Ishikawa's the lead expansion writer for Shadowbringers. I think she was an Endwalker as well. Dawntrail was under Hiroi. So it's a different structure to the team on a per expansion basis. So I think with 8.0, they'll probably have someone else helming the writing. And so Ishikawa's still like the head of writing, but the head expansion writer for the next expansion probably will not be the same guy that's writing it right now. Just got a feeling like it'll either not be him or it'll be him working in tandem with someone else. But like there's reason to believe that with a new expansion, they would change the structure of the team a little bit. And so there's more optimism, I would say, for 8.0 than there is for the patches. But yeah, biggest problem I had with 7.3, like I said, is like, I think the overarching story isn't really that good. The stuff with the regulators and turning on the terminals and whatnot, like I just felt like the overarching story wasn't really that solvent. I didn't like it that much narratively. But what's always important with this game in particular, with such a vast and interesting cast of characters, what's important is that the character writing works. And like I said, I think the character writing was much more on point this time around than it was in 7.0 and 7.1. The biggest problem is they got to start trimming this stuff down, because the MSQ is starting to feel like Bozia writing, where it's like, okay, this is interesting what's happening, but there's way too much text. Like, we got to trim this down a little bit. Like, not every line of dialogue needs to be an essay. You can tell, like, improvements have been made since 7.0, but it needs more. Hiroi co-wrote Bozia. Yeah, he was the assistant writer on that, which really kind of explains a lot when you think about it. But yeah, there's still room for improvements, a lot of them. It's starting to feel like Shadowbringers was just the anomaly, you know? It's gonna be a sad day if 8.0 doesn't pick up the pace. Like, 8.0 has got to be really good, because we're going to hit a point where there's more bad writing than good writing in the MSQ. And the MSQ is like the thing that everybody praises in this game. So yeah, as far as MSQ goes, like I said, it's incrementally a little bit better than the past few patches, but it's still very much Dawntrail writing. I also don't like what they've done with Wuklamot. And I've said this many times before, but like, I get that she's not that popular because 7.0 was rough. But like, putting her off screen as much as possible is not the solution to that problem, because that's not going to do anything to help her reputation out. Like, if they found ways to portray her more favorably, they don't have to have her on screen constantly, but just give her some interesting things to do. Give her some good scenes that are like fun and relatable. They could maybe win some people over with her that currently don't like her, but instead they just basically take her off screen as often as possible. And so all the people that don't like Wuklamot are going to continue not liking her. They should at least try a little bit to try and win some favor over and be like, hey, look, she's not that bad. Like, they don't have to shove her in your face, but like, I don't like that they've made her so scarce. But 7.3 was the best she's been. She's barely there. The only memorable thing she did the entire patch was almost die by hitting a shield too hard. The moment they had us killed Necron 2.0 with pretty words. Yeah, Sphene like fighting against tempering by just giving a rousing speech. That was definitely one of the worst things that happened this patch. She was big hurt for slapping a wall too hard. Yeah, it almost makes it feel like maybe they changed the cutscene, or like maybe they reduced her role in the cutscene, but they kept the fact that she was injured, or like, because it felt like her injury was disproportionate to what caused it, you know? Hitting a shield shouldn't have made her bedridden, but maybe she was supposed to kill Steel Necron and they just wrote that out because they thought people wouldn't like it. I wonder if they like adjusted it after Dawntrail. I don't know how they'd save it. I think they can absolutely save Wuklamot's image, but they have to be brave enough to try. Instead, they've just resolved to put her off screen as much as possible. I think you can absolutely make Wuklamot more favorable in the eyes of the audience, but it wouldn't be easy, but I think you could do it. Honestly, just transplant Moonbreeda's personality onto her. That's just turn her into Moonbreeda, but don't say anything, because the two are similar enough. Like, the difference between Wuklamot and Moonbreeda is like maybe 10%. If you just shift her toward Moonbreeda, that's all it would take. Like, it's maturity. Well, yeah, but well, she's been the ruler of Tulialal for however long it's been since 7.0, so you could just arbitrarily say she became more mature now that she's gone through all these experiences and whatnot. Like, give her a little bit of personality, improve the writing, you know. I think you could actually salvage Wuklamot's image, but it's clear that the writers aren't going to try, because instead they've just written her out of the script as much as possible, and she's probably never going to be relevant again from this point onward. But I think they could salvage Wuklamot if they cared to, so yeah. I don't really know how to summarize my thoughts better than I think I already kind of got the point across. Like, didn't like it that much. Good animations, good cutscenes, good graphics. Second dungeon boss was the only notable part of the combat for me. Like, the second dungeon boss was fun. The rest of the dungeon was a dungeon. The trial was a trial. It was like one of the most trials we've had in a while. It just didn't really do anything special or interesting, you know? When will you do the Alliance raid? Probably tomorrow. I think people not liking the VA made keep using are a bit of a risk. Nah, see, they made an interesting choice on the English VA. Like, there's no denying that. But like, the biggest thing was that the dialogue sucked. And so we've had likable characters with bad voice acting, or, you know, whether you consider it bad or not. But like, you know, we've had likable characters with weirdly mismatched voices in the past, or even in some cases, actually bad voice acting. The writing is what ruined it. You could have given Wooklamot's role to any actor, it would have been hard to sell. And they oddly chose someone who wasn't that good at yelling in the Wooklamot voice, whereas Wooklamot's a very loud and energetic character, so it's like, it was kind of a weird casting, but like, it's not the voice actor's fault. So like, that script would have been tough for anybody to sell. They changed her every patch since we saw her, it felt. Yeah, they were trying to adjust around feedback, whereas like, I get it, but I almost would have respected it more if they just stuck to the original vision, even if I think the original vision sucked. Limited range, but working with a rough script. Well, they could have cast someone that had a vocal range that was more in line with the character, but again, it wouldn't have mattered for the character's likability, because the point of like people not liking Wooklamot was not because of the voice. For some people, that was more fuel on the fire. It was more reasons for them to not like Wooklamot, but that wasn't the only reason, you know? There's a lot of people that played the non-English version and still didn't like her. Like, it wasn't the voice that ruined the character, you know? Good VA can't save a bad script. The best thing that a good VA can do with a bad script is not take it too seriously and just have fun with it. There's something to be said for that, but, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, if people don't like something, they'll look for more and more reasons to not like it. So like, it wouldn't matter who was voicing that character. People would have probably complained about it either way, because the script just wasn't great and the character was not portrayed very well. But didn't help the VA attack the community for not liking Smile. Yeah, there is definitely an element of like, you gotta just keep your head down. And if you're the voice actor in a game and people don't like that game that you're in, like, you gotta just like let business be business. Like, you don't want to go around grandstanding about it. Like, that's not gonna help. That never helps. Smile is black gospel, apparently. Yeah, so at a certain point, you gotta just like let people not like the thing you like. It's fine. You gotta accept it and move on. It sucks, but it is what it is. Like, I think they'll bring back Tom Holland for commercials for 8.0. I don't know if they'll be able to afford him. Don't understand why people kept paying attention to them. Oh, because it becomes an easy target. Where it's like, oh, hey, this person is, responding to us. Let's keep hitting them. Like, if you respond to people that are upset on the internet, they're gonna just keep going after you. Like, you gotta just keep your head down and let it blow over. Like, if you actually engage with people when they have decided they want to hate something, like, you're never gonna win that battle. You gotta let it blow over. Forgot they played Smile where we were building a bomb train. Yeah. I honestly don't mind the song Smile, but yeah, it plays at awkward moments that on its own, it's okay as a song, but it never feels appropriate the moments that it plays. Even the coronation scene of Wooklamot winning the rights of succession, it still feels out of place there. It worked best, in my opinion, on the credits. Like, as a credits song, I think it worked. It feels like a Disney credits song, you know? It's still a little bit juvenile for FF14, but it was fine there, you know? But yeah, the places it played in the middle of the MSQ, it always felt out of place. It should have been like just the instrumental version or something like that. But how do you stay immersed in the game setting after this MSQ? Well, that's up to each individual to decide. Everybody will have their own take on it. Like, I've had trouble being immersed in the setting since Endwalker, but it just is what it is, you know? The immersion is not the only reason I play this game, thank goodness, because I would have left by now. But where can they go with the story that would be surprising? To take the story somewhere surprising, they'd have to do something totally different, which I wouldn't be able to predict. You know, it'd have to be something I can't even predict. It'll look good if I think about it's on its own. I don't know. I don't think it even stands on its own. Like, even if you were to take it out of the game and do it as a standalone, like, I think it's just a weak story, personally. Like, I just don't really like it, the story of Dawntrail. There's moments, there were, like, elements of it that I thought were good, but overall, like, I just could not get invested in the regulators and the soul memories and all that. Like, that just didn't work for me. Feels like a bad episode of Star Trek, emphasis on bad, like a filler episode of a mid-tier daytime sci-fi show. Like, and again, I guess putting it in the context of FF14, part of the problem stems from we did a lot of this theme in the previous expansion, the fear of death and what's next and what, like, we did so much of that in Endwalker, so it's like, oh god, this again, you know? But I guess that's more or less my initial thoughts. Not too thrilled with it. It's like a pretty mid patch. For a story ending, you want it to be a little better than mid, but like pretty mid patch, not too thrilled. I rate it Dawntrail out of 10. Here's looking forward to 7.4.